digital age has most of us drowning in information, but not all information should be treated equal, and not all of it is news. Today kicks off the 3rd annual National News Literacy Week, a campaign promoting the importance of understanding your news in order to stop misinformation from spreading. Usher Qureshi sat down with the founder of the News Literacy Project on separating fact from fiction and how to be a smart, active participant in our world's news.
Last year, the average American adult spent about 11 hours a day consuming media on their computers, television, or mobile device. That's a 20% increase from just a decade earlier.
We think news literacy is an essential skill in today's front information environment. It's really a life skill.
Alan Miller is the founder and CEO of the News Literacy Project. He started the nonprofit in 2008 to address concerns about the tsunami of sources of information that vary in credibility and accountability.
News literacy is the ability to evaluate all news and information and to discern credible information, to be able to sort fact from fiction.
A fact is defined as something known to be true. Opinion is a belief or judgment that rests on grounds insufficient to produce complete certainty. The main difference is that facts can be proven, whereas opinions cannot. A 2018 Pew Research study found that when presented with 5 factual and 5 statements of opinion, only 26% of adults were able to correctly recognize all 5 statements of fact. Just 35% were able to identify the statements that were opinions correctly.
We've got a perfect storm now that has created a situation where misinformation is an existential threat to the health of our democracy.
Miller says 1 in 5 newspapers have gone out of business in the last 15 years, while at the same time there's been an explosion of other sources of information.
Particularly online and through social media platforms that do not seek to inform in a fact-based, contextual, accountable way, but rather seek to persuade or exploit or misinform.
And he says therein lies the importance of news literacy. I'm Usher Qureshi reporting.
News literacy is really fundamental to what we believe in here at Newsy, going behind the headlines and really getting you that context that you need to know. So we want to talk about the value of news literacy and how you can fend off the spread of misinformation in your news and media consumption. So we're joined by the Senior Director of Professional Learning at the News Literacy Project, John Silva. Thank you for joining us, John. So what is America's grade when it comes to news literacy?
Good morning. Yeah, I'm very happy to join you. So, you know, the teacher in me, I was a classroom teacher before joining the News Literacy Project, wants to say we don't have enough to be able to give a grade. The reality is that news literacy as a structured, consistent part of the American education experience just really hasn't been there for a significant amount of time. It's really only in the last several years that we've seen a major increase. I will just say that generally, I think we're getting a little better, but we have a long way to go.
Now, John, I've had so many conversations, I mean, not even just within my family, but with friends as well, who either share posts that are just absolutely untrue and they don't know the difference and cannot see the difference there. How do we get to a point where most Americans are not news literate?
I think one of the most important things that we want to do first through news literacy is teaching how to evaluate information, the credibility of information and the credibility of sources, but it's also about knowing when we need to check. And I think a really good rule of thumb that I would really love to encourage people to think about, and as a starting habit, is that if you see something that you want to share, or if there's a piece of information that you want to act on or use to make a decision, before you do anything, you need to verify it. You need to determine whether or not it's credible. And that's a really important first step in terms of just general news literacy.
And it has been really amazing, though, to see, because I remember when I was in middle school or high school, one of the first things our teachers told us was if it doesn't have a .gov or .org on the end of that website, it's more than likely not true. And then fast forward, you know, a couple decades, and now it is just so vital, and misinformation just runs completely rampant. What is the difference between news literacy and media literacy?
So media literacy is a very broad field of study, and it's been around for some time. News literacy is a particular type of, it's a discipline within media literacy. So when we teach news literacy and when we talk about news literacy, It's that ability to determine credibility of information, credibility of sources, but it's also about understanding that one of the most important ways that we are informed is through news organizations and journalists who are following the standards of quality journalism. So when we talk about news literacy, it's really about information and sources of information and being able to evaluate it. To sort of put it a little bit more broadly, so if we talk about media literacy and news literacy, one example I'd like to use is with the pandemic. In some ways, media literacy is looking at all of the different ways that we talk about the pandemic. And that could include things like how it's portrayed on television shows. For example, like Grey's Anatomy is one, right? But news literacy really focuses on what is happening right now that I can get, verified information to help inform the decisions that I want to make.
So what changes have you seen in journalism, news literacy, and misinformation when you compare that, the print and digital age?
Well, I think in terms of where we are right now, information just moves so much faster, and we can reach more people more rapidly than any other time. So when we talk about print journalism, they were in many ways the gatekeepers of information. We only had a limited amount of information that came through them. Now, really anyone can publish information. People can create their own blogs, their own newsletters. And so there are more and more sources. And information is spreading so quickly that we need to be aware of that. And in some ways, just kind of find ways to slow down.
What would you say is the ultimate solution to media misinformation?
Oh, the most important solution, it has got to be education. Not only do we have to focus on the things that we're doing at the News Literacy Project to provide resources and professional learning for educators to be able to integrate this into the curriculum, but in a lot of ways, I think a lot of adults need to take some time to sort of have a refresher about critical thinking and reasoning and learn some of these essential habits and skills so that they can start to practice this. Because that's how this is going to slow down, is by helping everyone realize that we have a role to play, no matter how small, in slowing down and maybe even eventually stopping some types of misinformation.
That is the hope there. Senior Director of Professional Learning at the News Literacy Project, John Silva. Thanks for your time today. Have a good one.
Thank you so much.
All right, and we should note Newsy's parent company, Scripps, is a partner in the News Literacy Project. For more on how to boost your news literacy skills, visit newslit.org.